It is our natural wiring to adapt. The only challenge is how we somehow adapt quickly to the wrong things than the right things. Yes, it is our normal wiring to adapt. But unfortunately, we tend to adapt to the wrong things more than to the right things. Great evening, guys. Thank you so much for joining us again on another exciting episode on the Upgrade Live with Mr. Upgrade. I'm super excited to have you here again. And today, it's going to be fun as always, right? It's going to be interesting. It's going to be transformative. It's going to be educative, right? So, what you have to do for me and for us, the team, is that you get to just share this with everyone, right? So that they too can learn and they too can upgrade. So, as you begin this journey today, please help share with your friends, your family, your loved ones, and even your enemies, right? So that they too can be part of this and so they too can upgrade. Okay, so on the Upgrade Live with Mr. Upgrade, we basically do this every Sunday, 7 p.m. through to 8 p.m. And we basically get to talk about four things, right? Number one, we get to take your questions. So if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to send in your questions and we'll gladly take them, right? Number two, we get to share with you the upgrade mastery tip for the week. And for every week, there's a new upgrade mastery tip that we share that would help us for that week. For this week, the upgrade mastery tip is adapt, right? Adapt. Number three is that we get to connect, network, and bond because we live in a world where it is important that we get to connect, we get to network, and we get to bond. That's what we get to do here on the Upgrade Live with Mr. Upgrade. And number four is that we get to have fun. Yes, we got to have fun because I strongly believe that if learning is not fun, there is no learning at all. So we get to have fun while we do what we do on the Upgrade Live with Mr. Upgrade. So this is the usual time, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Whatever you're doing is the time for you to pause and then join in on the Upgrade Live because it will be worth your while. Now, while we wait for your questions, because we love to take questions because we already know that questions are more important than answers. So while we wait for your questions, we always begin the conversation with basic 5 questions. Now, these 5 questions help to set the tone for the conversation. They just help us to lay the foundation on what it is that we're going to be talking about all through this conversation, right? So let's begin with our 5 questions with question number one. Now, question number one is simple. It is, what is adapt? When you hear the word adapt, what does it mean? What does it resonate with you? What does it bring to mind when you hear adapt? Because you hear that we live in a world where we are always adapting, right? When COVID came, we found a way to adapt and overcome COVID. There's always something that we have gone through that we get to adapt. Now, what is adapt? Now, one of the things that we do here is that we tell you do not try to go to the dictionary or Google or ChatGPT to get the definitions that we share. Just pay attention to what we're doing and you will learn a lot. Now, adapt. It is to make mental, emotional, and physical adjustments to people, places, and things in order to survive and then thrive. That is adapt. It is to make mental, emotional, and physical adjustments to people, places, and things in order to survive and then to thrive. That is what it means to adapt. So the whole idea of adapt is about a mental, emotional, physical adjustment to people, to places, to things in order for you to survive and then for you to thrive. So you have to adapt, right? Now, question number two, who's responsible for adapt? Now, we know what adapt is. Now, who then is responsible for adapt? I'll tell you this. You are responsible for adapt. No one's responsible for how you adapt or when you adapt or why you adapt, but you are responsible for adapt, right? So it's all on you for you to adapt. Question number three, is why adapt? Why do we need to adapt? Why do we need to adapt? Why can't we just continue the way we have always been? Why do we, for any reason whatsoever, need to adapt? Three reasons why you need to adapt. Number one, adjustment. You adapt because you need to make adjustments. Number two, survival. You adapt because you need to survive. And number three, thriving. You adapt because you need to thrive. So these are three basic reasons why adapt: adjustment, survival, thriving. Anyone you look around the world, these are the three reasons why they had to adapt. They had to adapt because they needed to adjust, to make adjustments, they needed to survive, and they needed to thrive. So because of these three reasons, everyone is expected to adapt, regardless of where you find yourself. Right? I'm going to bring in some very important analogies and examples as we make progress on this conversation. So please don't go anywhere. Right? Don't go anywhere. Question number 4. What are the benefits of adapt? Now we know why we need to adapt. We know what adapt is. We know who's responsible for adapt. What then are the benefits? What do I stand to gain if I adapt? And number one benefit why you need to adapt is because life goes on. Whether you adapt or you don't adapt, life goes on. Life is never going to be on a standstill because you did not adapt. Life is not going to wait for you because you did not adapt. Life is not going to pause for you because you did not adapt. So whether you adapt or not, life goes on. But it's even interesting when you adapt because life goes on. You adapt to the new situation and you continue with life. That's an amazing benefit. So you are not stuck with the past. You make progress into your future because you adapt, because life goes on. Number two benefits of adapt is the emergence of a new version. Whenever you adapt, a new version of you emerge. Why? Because you've been able to survive and now you are thriving. So a new version of you now survive. A new version of you now come to be. Right? So that's the benefit of adapt, because there's a new you that comes into existence because you adapt. The old you is dead, the new you is here because you adapt. Right? The third benefit of adapt is that it is a life skill. You are going to need this skill wherever you go in life. The truth is, you're not always going to remain where you have always been. So you're going to go to new places, meet new people, you're going to get to new environments. So it's a life skill that you have when you can adapt. You're going to meet new cultures, new nations, new tribes, new tongues. It's a life skill when you can adapt. That's the only way you can now be able to thrive. So you see, these are three benefits of adapt. Number one, life goes on. Number two, the emergence of a new version. And number three, it's a life skill. Now, question number 5 is, when's the best time to adapt? When's the best time to adapt? Like I always tell us here, the last best time to adapt was yesterday. The next best time for you to adapt is now. Now is the best time for you to adapt. Now is the best time. See, life comes down to adapt or die. As funny as that sounds, life comes down to these two options for you: adapt or die. And the truth is, you need to adapt to what is right and die to what is wrong. That's it. You need to adapt to what is right and die to what is wrong. So, like it or not, we are a product of adaptation. Use or disuse theory by Charles Darwin. We are all products of adaptation. You know, Charles Darwin calls it the theory of survival of the fittest. But I like to say that it's actually the survival of the most adaptable. Right? The one who's able to adapt the most is the one that will survive and thrive. So it's more of the adaptable. And that's what we're talking about this conversation on adapts. Now, you ready for us to begin the gist of adapt? We've laid the foundation. Let's get into the gist proper. Adapt. 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 right? Now let's break down the letters in the word so that we can understand it even more, right? Now the A in adapt is awareness. You see, believe it or not, you can never adapt to what you are not aware about. That's the truth. One of the reasons why you adapt is because of the awareness that you have. Awareness makes adapting easy. I'll say that again. Awareness make adapting easy. So the A in adapt is awareness. Now the reason why you're able to adapt to certain things is because you have become aware of those things. Right? You become aware of those things. Like for example, in the period where the coronavirus hit the globe, right? We became aware of the coronavirus and then we started to adapt to preventive measures for the spread. People started to wear nose masks, people started to wash their hands, started to be social distancing. That was us adapting to the awareness that there was a coronavirus. So the thing that helps you to adapt is the fact that there is awareness. You cannot adapt to what you are not aware of. That's just the truth. You cannot adapt to what you lack awareness of. So there must be awareness for adapt to take place. So if someone is adapting to something, that person is already aware of that thing. Because of that awareness, you have no choice to say, okay, this is what it is. This is what it is. So let me adapt. People adapt to abuse because they are aware that there's no other way out than to be in that place where they are being abused. So they adapt to it. The awareness is always there when you adapt. No one adapts to what they are unaware of. Check around you. There's no one who adapts to what they are unaware of. So the A in adapt is awareness. The D in adapt is decision. Now, as difficult as this may be to believe, for you to adapt is because you decide to adapt. I know you may say, no, but it's not my fault. I didn't have any role to play in this. I was just being in a situation where I couldn't help myself. The truth is this. Even your indecision is still a decision. So to adapt is a decision. You have chosen that I'm going to adapt. You have chosen that, okay, this is this for now, and then I don't have a choice. The truth is, the D in adapt is decision. You made the decision to adapt. You made the decision to stay with the abuse. You made the decision to still be there. It was your decision. It was your decision. So the truth is this, people adapt because they decide to. Yeah, people adapt because they decide to. So there's always a decision that people make in order for them to adapt. There's always that decision. Yes, you may say, no, but we were pushed to the wall. We didn't have a choice. No, you had a choice, but you decided to adapt. Now, this is going to hurt. This is going to break a lot of tables, but it is what it is. It is what it is. The reason why you are still where you are is because you have made a decision to adapt to where you are. The moment you decide otherwise, things start to change. The D in adapt is decision. The A in adapt, the second A in adapt is ability. Now, no adapting happens without you bringing in your ability. You're wondering, how is that even possible? Just listen. You see, you are able to adapt to things because you now begin to do things that gives you a little bit of comfort with those things. People find a way, they find comfort in their discomfort. Why? Because they now bring in the ability to now adapt to the situation. So there's always the ability that comes into play when you have to adapt. Something you have to do that makes you adapt. There's how you have to behave. There's how you have to think. There's how you have to respond that makes you adapt. That is your ability that you are bringing into your adapt. Is this making sense? Yes, it is. because now you're realizing that, oh, the reason why I've been here and I'm still surviving while I'm there is because my ability is here. That's why. That's why. You know, if you live in Nigeria in 2024, you would realize so many things that people have adapted to because the ability is there for them to adapt to those things. Right? In 1 year, the price of fuel has gone up more than 100%. But guess what? People have found a way to adapt because the ability is innate for them to adapt. I was talking with someone recently. I said, what you would use to probably go half your tank 2, 3 years ago will not even give you 10 liters today. But people have found a way to adapt with the ability, regardless of how things are skyrocketing. So there's the role of your ability in how you adapt. You may not believe it, but it doesn't change the truth. The P in adapt is pain. It's pain. Funny how people adapt because of pain. You know, they say people change for two reasons. They're trying to avoid pain or they're trying to remove pain. That's why they change. Either they're trying to avoid the pain or they're trying to remove the pain. That's why they change. See, pain plays a key role for people to adapt. Pain. Pain plays a key role why people adapt. You know, there's a way you get used to pain that it makes no difference anymore. I'll say that again. There's a way you get used to pain, it makes no difference anymore. Guess what? That pain had made you to adapt. You know, talk about people suffering and smiling. How can people be suffering and be smiling? They've gotten used to the pain. That's why they can suffer and smile. They've gotten used to the pain. And because of that, they now adapt like, this is what it is. Nothing's going to change. We're always going to be like this. So they get used to the pain and then they adapt to the pain. You see how things happen that people adapt. So they don't just wake up and no, no, no. I think they have taken place. There's the awareness, there's the decision, there's the ability, there's the pain. These are the things that make people adapt. So you just think of people are just used to a particular thing. No, no, no. They've gone through this phase. That's why they adapt. And finally, the T in adapt is time. People don't adapt just like this. It takes a while. It takes time. It takes time. It starts slowly, it improves gradually, and then they adjust in it. It takes time. No one adapts with the snap of the finger. Nope. Nothing changes like that. People adapt over time. People adapt over time. Gradually, gradually, gradually. I'm talking about the failed situation in Nigeria. We've adapted. I was talking to a colleague and I was saying, do you remember there was a time a liter was 67 naira? And today is over 1,000 naira, the same liter. But guess what? With time, we adapt. We don't like it, but we adapt. That's just it. Adapt takes time. Adapt takes time. And interestingly, when people adapt, it changes them. And you don't even know. You don't even know that changes them. Because you are not the same person who started the adapting process as the same person who is now in the adapting process. You've been changed, but you don't even know. You don't even know. It's still same you, but you have changed because you adapt. And funny enough, people can adapt to all of the wrong things easily than they can adapt to the right things. In fact, people find it difficult adapting to the right things, but they find it easy to adapt to the wrong things. But right or wrong, the underlying factor is that people adapt. And even the government of the day know that people will adapt. So they are not moved when they bring in some policies. They know that, especially in Nigeria, they know that the citizens will adapt. Just give them time. They will adapt. Just give them time. They will adapt. So because of that, they're not moved. No, no, no. Just relax. They will adapt. And true to it, Nigerians will adapt. If there's one thing Nigerians are known for, good for, is that we adapt. We adapt. No matter the situation, no matter the hardship, no matter the circumstances, no matter the government of the day, we find a way to adapt. Like adapting is in our DNA. We are built different to adapt. We are built different. Right? Now, let's look at a few things because this is the conversation I really want to let us understand a lot of things, but in simple ways that we can always remember. Right? Now, three things about adapt that you need to always know, and I call them three C's of adapt. Right? Three C's of adapt is choice, conform, and change. I'll say that again. Choice, conform, and change. The first thing that happens to you when it comes to adapt is that you make a choice. See, there's no adapt process. There's nothing that you adapt that you did not choose that you're going to adapt to it. You make a choice. You make a choice. So let's say the price of cost of living, like they say now, the cost of living is killing the living, right? The price of goods and foodstuffs is going on the increase. Now people have to make a choice to adapt. Instead of eating 111, which is 3 times daily, they now make a choice to eat 011. That's 2 times daily, lunch and dinner. Or some people make the choice to do 001. No breakfast, only lunch, no dinner. They probably eating the dream. Just kidding. Right? Now, that is a choice they have to make to adapt. Isn't it? So there's always the choice you make to adapt. So no one adapts outside of their choice. There's always a choice. So you're adapting to the abusive and toxic relationship. You made the choice to adapt with the mind that the person would change. That was your choice you made to adapt. There's always a choice when it comes to adapt. Next thing is that you conform. What adapt will do to you is that it will conform you to the situation or to the circumstance. You conform. You find a way to now say, okay, it's not really that bad. Okay, we can actually bear. That's you conforming. That's you conforming. And that's one of the things that adapt does. It just makes you conform. You're like, okay, it's not really that bad. I'm going to talk about it later, right? First, it starts with, oh, this is really bad. It's not good. Then you start to conform and say, well, it's their life. It's not really that bad. Then you now go to the point where, oh, I really don't mind. That's because you now conform, because you adapt. The third thing is that it changes you. It changes you. The things that you made a choice for, the things that you've conformed to, guess what? It has made a change in you. So adapt changes you. You're not going to be the same person who is eating 3 times daily as the same person who is eating once a day. Adapt changes you. For good or for bad, there's always a change when you adapt. So these are the three things about adapt: choice, conform, and change. Now, there are always two traits you will find in people, and you know that these ones they adapt. Two traits you need to look out for, that you know that people adapt. Two traits. And what are these two traits? Number one, adjustment. Number two, conditioning. These are two traits you find in people, and you know that these ones they adapt. First, there is the adjustment that they make. Next is the conditioning that they have. So, first they make an adjustment because okay, they're adapting, and then that adjustment they made now conditions them. So they don't see anything any different. Adjustments and conditioning. These are two things that happen when people adapt. There's adjustments, there's conditioning. Now, look around you. Look at the things that people have adapted to. Just notice how it has played out. They made adjustments and now they are conditioned. I just know it plays out. Like this is not rocket science. They made adjustments, now they are conditioned. People who adapt, these are the two things that you always see that they exhibit. These are two traits: adjustment and condition. Now, the one goal of adapt is simple, right? The one goal of adapt is flexibility to evolve. People who adapt are not rigid, they are flexible to evolve. Good or bad, they are flexible to evolve. They are never rigid. And that's the goal of adapt: flexibility to evolve, to get people to the point where they evolve. That's the goal of adapt. Right? So you see that the caterpillar evolves into a butterfly. That's the goal to adapt. So no longer walking, crawling on the floor, it now can now fly as a butterfly. Right? That's the goal to adapt, the flexibility to evolve. Right? Now, I told you earlier, we were told in school about the survival of the fittest, theory of evolution, the survival of the fittest. And I said, to make addition to that is not just the survival of the fittest, it is the survival of the most adaptable. The one who survives is the one who is the most adaptable. It's not survival of the fittest, it is survival of the most adaptable. The more adaptable you are, the more you would survive and thrive because you're adaptable, because you are flexible to evolve. Right? So it's not about survival of the fittest, it is the survival of the most adaptable. The one who's most adaptable is the one who survives. And you see, unfortunately, guys, people can adapt to evil and wrong more than they adapt to good and right. People can adapt to evil and wrong more than they adapt to good and right. But funny enough, it takes the same energy to adapt to evil and wrong as it takes to adapt to good and right. Right? It takes the same energy to go forward as it takes to go backward. The same way it takes the same energy to adapt to what is wrong and evil. That's the same energy it takes to adapt to what is good and right. But unfortunately, people adapt more to what is wrong and evil than to what is good and right. So it's misplacement of the energy because it's the same energy. It's the same energy. It's the same energy, but just misplacement of the energy. Because more people tend to adapt to what is wrong and evil than they do what is right and good. But it's the same energy it's going to take. Same energy. But funny how humans have evolved today because of our ability to adapt. I told you earlier about the example of Nigeria. So if you live in Nigeria, you can buy an item today for 1,000 naira and go to the store the next day for the same item and it is 2,000 naira. I jokingly say most of the time that it's only in Nigeria that the law of gravity doesn't hold, in the sense that what goes up never comes down, it just keeps going up. Right? It doesn't, Nigeria defy the law of gravity. What goes up doesn't come down, it keeps going up. So, funny how Nigerians have evolved so well that they are able to adapt regardless of the situation. You know, there was a time in this country we were using naira to buy naira, but we adapt. Like Nigerians will literally say, "Bring it on, whatever it is, bring it on. We will adapt." Like that should be a slogan for Nigerians. We will adapt. That's like a tagline. We will adapt regardless of it. Why? We've evolved to that point where We become so good with our ability to adapt. We don't complain, we don't cry, we just adapt. Because Nigeria has happened to Nigerians, so they adapt. And interestingly, also, pressure can make people adapt quickly. Pressure, when people are going through pressure, they adapt quickly. They adapt quickly, no time to waste. They adapt quickly when people are going through pressure. See, it's amazing how people easily adapt to scarcity than they adapt to abundance. It's shocking. Literally, it is shocking how people can easily adapt to scarcity than they can adapt to abundance. You know, it's weird how we don't even think about these things I'm talking about right now. You know why? Because we've adapted. So we don't even think about it. We just move on with life. Remember, I told you earlier, one of the benefits of adapt is that life goes on. We just move on with life. We don't even realize how we have adapted. Like literally, we don't realize how we have adapted, but we just move on. Well, it's life. Life goes on. We just move on. But we don't know that we've adapted. And many times we easily adapt to scarcity than we adapt to abundance. We adapt to scarcity. So things are getting hard, things are getting difficult. We are quick to adapt to that. But when things are good and flourishing, we are hard to adapt to that. Why? Because we have already been conditioned that this one that is flourishing may not last. So, see what I told you earlier that the trait of adapting is adjustment and conditioning. So while you're making adjustment on the one hand, it is conditioning you on the other hand. So that's why people are more adapt to scarcity than they adapt to abundance. So you see, when people are getting blessed, they're not getting more, they are still conditioned to scarcity because they've adapted to that. They cannot adapt to their new status now. They are still holding on to their old status. So that's why, interestingly, people adapt easily to scarcity and they adapt to abundance. But it's funny how the environment also conditions people to adapt. You know, my friend Emmanuel, who does the Let's Talk podcast with Emmanuel on Wild FM, happened to share on that episode, Adapt, on episode 132 on their podcast. The episode is on environment. I encourage you to go look up that episode on Let's Talk podcast with Emmanuel on Wild FM. Right, episode 132 talks about adapt. I'm going to post about it on my Instagram, right? So you can follow my Instagram to get more information on that. It talks about the environment. There's so much you need to know about the environment and how the environment conditions people to adapt. So I'll give you an example that happened to me, right? Sometime in 2016, so I went to South Africa for a 10-day study visit to the University of Stellenbosch in Pretoria, South Africa. And when we arrived at OR Tambo International Airport, right? So as we're done with immigration, we're trying to get our bags to leave the airport. Now, a lady came to us, myself and my other colleagues who were on the trip, right? It was the 10-day study visit. Now, the lady came to us and gave us newspaper for that day, right? Now, while she was bringing it to me, I was trying to reject it and like, no. And then the lady looked at me and like, it's free. And then I took it. I felt so ashamed of myself. I was like, oh my God. And then I realized the environment that was coming from in Nigeria, when people are giving you papers like that, they're expecting you to buy. So when I got into a new environment where I was being given for free, I have already been conditioned by the environment I was coming from that I have to pay for everything. And I was like, Jesus. This is how environment conditions people to adapt. So in my head, I was going to pay. But in that environment, it is free. But the conditioning of the environment I was coming from that I have adapted to is that I get to pay. Are you seeing what I'm talking about? The environment conditions people to adapt. It conditions people to adapt. So I was blown away by that experience. And it did something to me like, oh my God. Hi. Literally, it did something to me. There's so many other experiences I had from that trip in South Africa. I was like, oh my word. Huh? That was the first time I saw that, okay, you could literally walk on the street and get into shops and they are free Wi Fi. Way back 2016, not even now. Way back 2016. See, you have no idea how your environment conditions you to adapt to certain things. You have no idea. Literally, you have no idea. You just think it's you. It's not you. Your environment has conditioned you to adapt. Go listen to that episode on the environment, guys. You need to listen to that episode. You'll be blown away. You will be blown away when you listen to that episode. Now, you see, there was also this experiment that was done, right? And a frog was put in a conical flask, and another frog was put in a conical flask that had water. And then one of the conical flasks was being heated up slowly, gradually, right? As the frog was there and the conical flask was being heated up with the water that's in it being heated up, the frog was adapting to the condition. It stayed and was adapting. The water was heat, was getting warm, it was getting hot, and then it started to boil, and then it boiled the frog. Now the frog adapted to the point where it died. The other one was still there because it was cold water. And then they brought another hot conical flask with water and they put a frog in it. The moment the frog put his leg on it and saw that it was hot, it jumped out. So I learned something from there. That's what I'll share with you here. People can adapt to death, or people can adapt to life. You choose what you adapt to. The frog that was in the conical flask that was being heated, the moment he kept adapting to the heat, it didn't jump out until he died when it was boiled. The one who was dropped in hot water, the moment he got into it, he jumped out. He said, no, this can be the environment for me. He jumped out. So you must ask yourself, which environment am I adapting to? Am I adapting to death? Or am I adapting to life? You must ask yourself that question. Because whether you like it or not, you are adapting. It's not even a given. Whether you like it or not, you are adapting. So you need to ask yourself, what have I been adapting to? Am I adapting to life? I'm adapting to death. Because you are adapting, bro. You are adapting. This, you are adapting. Whether you like it or not, whether you are aware or not, you are adapting. Right? So are you adapting to life? Or are you adapting to death? That's a question you need to ask yourself. Which are you adapting to, life or death? It's on you to answer. You see, the children of Israel are a good example of adapt. First off, they were, it was prophesied about them that they will be in 400 years of slavery. But guess what? 400 years came and passed. They were still in slavery. Why? They've adapted to slavery. They've adapted. They were over 430 years before Moses now showed up on the scene, or 440 years before Moses showed up on the scene to deliver them because God has given him the instruction to go deliver them. But the 400 years mark had come and gone. They had now adapted. If you know something was to end by the fourth year, wouldn't you be looking forward to the fourth year so it ends? How do you now move on from fourth year to still fifth year, sixth year, seventh year? Why? You adapt. You adapt. So ask yourself, what are the things that you've adapted to that you should not have adapted to? Because remember, I told you in adapt, it takes time. And when time has done its course, you have now been conditioned. You have now been conditioned. See, guess what? Scripture reminds us in Exodus that the more they afflicted them, the more they grew. That was a means for them adapting to. As they were afflicting them, God was ensuring that they were growing. That was the way for them to also adapt. It was because of how much they grew, Pharaoh said, the way these people are much, they can join our enemies if war should break out to defeat us. So let's enslave them. Read your Bible in the book of Exodus. You see this story, the beginning part of Exodus. When the Pharaoh who knew no Joseph came into power. Right? At some point, when Moses came and said, oh, he wanted to set them free and let them go, Pharaoh said, okay, it's because these guys don't have work. That's why they are thinking of leaving. Stop giving them straws and let them still meet their daily quota. Now, that's like telling people, I'm not giving you cement, but you must keep molding blocks. But yet, they found a way to still keep meeting their daily quota even without the straws. How best way to explain people who can adapt? Like, how best can you explain people who can adapt? They found a way to still meet their daily quota without the straws because they were good at adapting. You have no idea how much you have been adapting. That's why this conversation is for you. So you can look back on your life and see, what have I been adapting that I have not even paid attention to? Where have I been adapting? In my finances, my spiritual life, in my health, in my emotions, in my physicality. Where have I been adapting that I don't even know? You see, even when they were taken out of Egypt, because they so adapted to Egypt, Egypt had not left them. Because when they needed meat, they started to cry and say, oh, it was best that we were still in Egypt. At least we had the garlics and the cucumbers. Are you for real? You are eating manna that was coming directly from heaven, and you are still thinking of garlics and cucumbers. Why? Because they've adapted to Egypt. They have left Egypt, but Egypt has not left them. And the garlics and cucumbers were the food given to them as slaves. Yet, they have adapted to it. Adapt does the conditioning to people. I told you earlier, adapt conditions you. It does the conditioning. You don't see things any different. It does the conditioning to you when you adapt. Now you see why when they wanted to return to Egypt because of garlics and cucumbers, he told Moses that take us back to Egypt. At least we had garlics and cucumbers and melons. Like, how do you go back to slavery? Because you adapt to slavery. The reason you will go back to your abuser is because you've adapted to the abuse, Stockholm syndrome. You've adapted to it, so you will go back. You keep telling yourself that the devil you know is better than the angel you don't know. It's not you, you've adapted. It's conditioning. It's conditioning. It's conditioning. You're like that frog in the conical flask that's being heated. It's conditioning. See these guys. Sometimes it's hard to take people away from what they have adapted to. It's hard. As much as we want them to have better lives, it's hard to take them away from what they've adapted to. I always say this, that sometimes you can take the guy or the girl out of the trenches, but you cannot take the trenches out of the girl or the guy. Why? Because they've adapted to the trenches. They've adapted. It's hard to take people away from what they've adapted to. It's hard. But you see this, Nigeria, we adapt to bad governance. We are suffering and smiling. We are suffering and smiling. We adapt to bad governance. We adapt. See, protest is a very audacious statement. We see protest is a public demonstration of what we don't like, but what we will still adapt. Like protest, when people go on the street, we know we agree, carry placards and all of those things. It is a public demonstration of what we don't like, but what we will still adapt. Recently, there was a protest in Nigeria. It was going to be for 10 days. People died, first or second day. People died. Over 16, 17 persons died in some states in Nigeria. But guess what? The protest ended, nothing changed. In fact, things became worse. Things became worse. Why? It's a public demonstration of what we don't like, but we will still adapt. See, a classical example of people who adapt the most in this world, I may be wrong, but it's Nigerians. No one adapts quickly like a Nigerian. No one adapts quickly like a Nigerian in Nigeria. See, people are adapting to the abnormal as the new normal. See, LGBT and the other agendas that are going around in the world today, people are beginning to adapt to it. That is abnormal, but it is now the new normal, and people are adapting to it. Literally, people are adapting to it. They're like, okay, let me tell you how this thing works when it comes to adapt. Let me tell you how it works. First, there is I can never do this. I can never do this. And then it gets to the next phase where you start to say, well, it's not that bad. It's not really that bad. And then it gets to the next phase where it's like, I don't mind. That's how you start to adapt. That's how you start to adapt. First, you reject it. Then you consider it. And then you accept it. That's how you adapt. That's how you adapt. And look around in the world today, people are adapting to so many things that were abnormal some decades ago that are now the new normal. They're now the new normal. It's funny how people will first react and then adapt. It's just funny. Right? First, no, never. They'll first react. And after a while, they will not adapt. They will not adapt. It's just funny how that happens. People first react. No, this can never happen. This will never happen. Well, it's okay. People first react and then they adapt. And it's funny how that happens all the time. It's just funny. It's just weird. It happens. You see, adapt, unfortunately, is a forceful conditioning. I've been talking about conditioning all along. Adapt has a way it forcefully conditions you. You don't want to be conditioned, but it conditions you. A forceful conditioning. You don't want to be conditioned, but it just has a way it conditions you. It's a forceful conditioning. It's a forceful conditioning. And you see, and people even adapt to learned helplessness. One of the things I learned on that trip to South Africa is learned helplessness. Now, just listen at the word, just listen to the word learned helplessness. Just tell people learn how to be helpless. Yes. Because when you get to a point where you have failed once, you failed twice, by the third time you're trying, you already believe that you would fail. That's learned helplessness in its basic explanation. Like you failed the first time, you failed the second time. By the third time, you already have it in your conditioning that you're going to fail again. At this point now, you have learned helplessness. And we saw that with that man by the pool of Bethesda. See, scripture is complete. Oh, Jesus. Scripture is complete. Scripture is complete. And I always tell people this, that the Bible is not a religious book. The Bible is a manual for living. It has all the examples there is. And it doesn't cover up anything. There's incest in the Bible. There's rape in the Bible. There's everything in the Bible. There's murder in the Bible. There's suicide in the Bible. It doesn't cover anything. There's homosexuality in the Bible. It doesn't cover anything. Remember the man by the pool of Bethesda in the Bible? The man had learned helplessness because when Jesus said, "Do you want to get well?" He said, "I have no one to help me." He said, "I have no one to help me." He had learned helplessness. He said, "I have no one to help me." That was not the question he was asked. The question is, do you want to get well? The answer to that question, because he had been there for 38 years, should have been, yes, I want to get well. But he said, I have no one to help me. He had learned helplessness. He had adapted to his situation. He had adapted to his situation. The same way the man at the beautiful gate had adapted to his situation. He was begging for alms. So when Peter and John met him, they said, "Look on us. Silver and gold have I none, but such as I have, I give unto thee." He wasn't expecting to be healed. He was expecting silver and gold because he had learned helplessness. But you see, the 4 lepers, right? The 4 lepers that were at the gate of the enemy's camp, they gave us a clue on how to break away from what you adapt. See, whatever you adapt to, you must now find a way to break away from it. Right. Now, if you follow what we've been talking about, you could see that we have just been going in sequel. Right? Whatever you have adapted to, you must find a way to break away from it. Because they have now conditioned you. And these 4 lepers, they gave us a clue on how this can be done. Right? Remember the question they asked themselves, why sit we here and die? Remember that question? That's a clue on how to break away from what you've adapted to. These guys were leprous. They were at the outskirts of town because it's not allowed for leprous people to be in the community of other healed people, other people who are not leprous, right? So they are always in the outskirts, right? So they have been conditioned that they are different and outcast. But when push comes to shove, they were all in famine together. And they asked themselves, why sit we here and die? If we stay here, we will die of the hunger. If we go to the enemy's camp, perhaps they will still kill us. So why sit we here and die? Now, in both options they had, it didn't look good. But they decided to break out from what they've adapted to all this while. Right? The 3 simple ways to break out from whatever you've adapted to is number 1, your belief and your thinking. These guys were asking themselves, why sit we here and die? Their belief had changed. Yes, they know they were leprous men, but their belief had changed. What's the worst that can happen? Like I always tell us all the time, those who say, if I perish, never perish. What's the worst that can happen? Their thinking and their belief has changed. 2, their speaking has changed. They said, why sit we here and die? You want to break away from what you've adapted to, your speaking needs to change. Your speaking needs to change. What you say to yourself needs to change. They ask themselves, why sit we here and die? Your speaking needs to change. The 3rd thing to break away from adapt is your action. They actually started to walk towards the enemy's camp. Now, while they were on their way, God made their feet that was leprous, that would not even make any sound, to sound like a marching army. And the people in the enemy fled away from their camp and left everything behind. By the time the 4 lepers arrived at the camp was empty. But all the goodies of the enemies were left behind. That only happened because they took action. So you want to break out from what you've adapted to, your thinking and your belief your speaking, and your action. These are the three simple ways to break out from whatever you adapt to. How you're thinking and what you're believing, how you're speaking, and the actions you are taking. That's how you break out. So the day the girl gets tired of the abuse in the relationship, she walks out. It's over, it's over. She walks out, she deletes the number, she moves on. Why? Because now her thinking has changed, her speaking has changed, her action has changed. She breaks away from that conditioning she had adapted to all along. See these guys. This is how you break away from what you adapt to. Your belief and your thinking, your speaking, and your action. That's how you break away. And see, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Don't adapt to smallness when you are meant for greatness. Don't adapt to smallness when you are designed for greatness. Don't. Because a lot of people adapt to smallness. Oh, it's just small me. No! Don't adapt to smallness. You are designed for greatness. Don't adapt to smallness. You see, the woman with the issue of blood, she refused to adapt to her condition. Because if she had adapted, she would not still be looking for a solution after 12 years. And take note, it wasn't that, it happened to her year 1 and she didn't do anything about it till year 12. No. For every year, she was still looking out for solution. That's why scripture tells us that she lost her wealth in the hands of many physicians because she was going from one to another, trying to get help to her situation. If she had adapted, she would have said, okay, this is how God has designed my life to now be. It's okay. I accept it. No, never accept a condition that you can break out from. Never accept it. Never accept a condition you can break out from. Because that's the idea for adapt, so that you accept it. But she refused to accept it. And because she refused to accept it, guess what? She had the encounter where she touched the hem of Jesus' garment and she was healed. Just because she did not adapt to her condition. The 4 friends of the man sick of palsy, they saw the crowd. They did not adapt to say, okay, the crowd is too much. After all, we tried, we came, but the crowd is too much. You know, when we say we came, we saw, we conquered. And people, they came, they saw, and they went back. This guy said, no, we are removing the roof, and we are going to drop him from the roof down to Jesus. Because they refused to adapt to that condition and say, no, the crowd is too much. This woman pressed through the crowd. She refused to adapt. Blind Bartimaeus screamed even more when they told him to shh. He refused to adapt. And you watching this right now, everything you may have adapted to, it's time for you to refuse to adapt and break out. Break out. Because it's in you to break out. No longer remain adapting to the wrong things. You see, you can change what you adapt to. You can change it. You can change what you adapt to. You can change it. You may have adapted to some addictions. You can break free. You can change what you adapt to. A country does not change when its citizens adapt. Case in point, Nigeria. A country does not change when its citizens adapt. It doesn't change. It remains the same and goes from bad to worse because the citizens adapt. Look at countries around the world that have refused to adapt. They've made changes in their government because they refuse to adapt. The citizens refuse to adapt. There have been changes. A country does not change when her citizens adapt. See, the conditioning of system is to get people to adapt. That's it. The conditioning of system is to get people to adapt. Once people adapt, it's finished. The end. Once people adapt, it's over. And see, the biggest challenge that people have is that they adapt too quickly. Just adapt. Just adapt too quickly. They just adapt too quickly. That's the biggest challenge. They adapt too quickly. They adapt. And you see, I told you earlier, and I'll tell you again, it takes the same energy to adapt to the wrong as it takes to adapt to the right. Same energy. Same energy. So the question is, what are you going to adapt to? Are you going to adapt to the wrong or you adapt to the right? Are you going to adapt to pain or you adapt to healing? Are you going to adapt to scarcity or you're going to adapt to abundance? Are you going to adapt to smallness or you're going to adapt to greatness? The question is, what are you going to adapt to? Because believe it or not, you are adapting. Yes, you are. You are adapting. The only question is, what are you adapting to? And I'm giving us what you can adapt to, but you are adapting. And you see, at the end of the day, it all comes down to adapt and evolve. That's what it comes down to. Adapt and evolve. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Guys, I don't know, but I believe that this would really help us to go back and reevaluate our lives on the things that we need to really adapt to and things we need to break out from adapting to. It's time for us to go back and reevaluate our lives. Because the essence of this is for you to go back and look at yourself. What have I been adapting to? What things I have adapted that I need to break out from? This is why we have come to do this. This is why we have shared this with you. And I always tell you in this new week, three things will happen to you. Number one, increased voice of God. Number two, open heavens over your life. And number three, more angelic activities in all that you do. Remember, guys, remember, there's always more on the upgrade side of life. And that's why we encourage you that you leave good behind so that you can upgrade. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.